Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace, here to talk some more Spawn Daily. Once again, I have the reading order extraordinaire, Blake Whitley, with me. For those that aren't aware, we are now going to do more of a deep dive into Spawn as opposed to just the regular reading order. But don't worry, we're still going to do the regular reading order. We're still going to do the regular series. It's still going to be one issue per episode. But based on Blake's incredible reading order and how much that stuff really affects what happens in the regular book, I decided to loop in some other series that tie in, like Curse of Spawn, Spawn Batman, Angela, Violator, all that stuff that's referenced by editor's notes in the regular series. So a lot of that other extra content, I'll call it, we're going to be doing 4, 5, sometimes 6 episodes in, or 6 issues in one episode, just to kind of condense it down. But for the and those episodes might run a little longer, but for the regular series, just like we've always done, it's going to be one issue per episode. So again, Blake Whitlow's reading order, just Google that or go to the show notes and click on the link. You can see it. It's a Google Doc. It's really simple to follow. Blake's even going back and based on our conversations, putting in some more notes about some of the other content in the reading order that's not the main Spawn series and talking about where it belongs and why. So it's a really great resource. And if, like us, you want to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Spawn by immersing yourself, going back, taking a trip down memory lane because you've experienced it before, or if you've never experienced it and you want to jump on the new content, the new shared universe that Todd McFarlane is trying to build with King Spawn and Gunslinger Spawn and the Scorched, this is the perfect place because that's why we're doing it also, so we can, catch up to that new stuff, and hopefully we'll have Todd on at some point. Hopefully we'll have Greg Capullo on. I have some other creators in mind as well that maybe haven't even worked on Spawn, but are big Spawn fans that want to come on and talk about what Spawn's meant for them. So we'll have all that stuff down the line. But for today, let's go ahead and dive into the book that we're up to, which is issue number 54. So let me go ahead and share my screen with everybody.
This is one of my favorite issues in the entire series.
Really?
I love this issue. It did such a great job for so many different reasons, and we'll get into it, but I love this issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to like. Yeah, I can't necessarily argue with your choice, especially when we get to the last page. So, but yeah, we have once again we have an awesome Greg Capullo cover. He does the line work. McFarlane inks. Brian Haberlin on colors. That's the same team you see inside the credits on the front cover with Danny Miki also credited with inks. Tom Orzechowski, copy editor and letterer. Haberlin on colors with an assist from Dan Kemp. We do see the recap for those that may not have joined us for issue 53. In that issue, we saw Al Simmons finally finish his journey, trek, whatever you want to call it, through the different levels of hell. He confronted Malbolgia. Blake and I talked about how it's sort of up in the air. The rules are never clearly established. It's sort of up in the air how much control over Spawn or Al Simmons Malbolgia actually has. Is he pretending to have more control than he might in order to manipulate Al Simmons? Yeah, probably so, regardless of how much control he actually has. But I commented on the fact that Al has been so fearful of using up his power and going back to hell at some point. And I think that threat has been lessened a little bit because it sort of happened, like his worst fear happened, right? He used his power to heal the cancer in his former best friend, Terry Fitzgerald's body, went to hell, and now he's returned. We saw at the end he's returned to Earth. So I think going forward, it's going to feel like maybe less of a threat. I mean, I could be wrong, but it's probably he's not going to worry about that so much. I think these next few issues really, he's more focused on, I feel like, kind of grabbing control of his life and being kind of more in charge of what happens to him. I think, Blake, in issue 50, you were talking about how, when we covered issue 50, about how Al has really just kind of let events come to him rather than having any agency. And it feels like with these issues, 54, maybe through 58 or so, maybe even a little past that, that he's definitely trying to gain some control and, make decisions and affect the things that are affecting him rather than let all these events just keep piling on him. What do you think?
I think you're completely right. After seeing how, after being exposed to, Malbolgia again, seeing some of the games that are being played, and he has a better idea of who he is and how he fits into all this now, 50 issues in, he's seeing for the first time, like, okay, Malbolgia is a big threat. Malbolgia is something that I've got to work up to, and I can't keep doing the same thing that I've been doing this whole time. That's not getting me anywhere. I've got to change somehow. I've got to adapt better to this situation and stop moping. Get off my ass.
Yeah, it's a good point. So what is interesting though is as 54 opens up, we see Al, he's sitting on his throne and he's thinking to himself, he's been told to embrace what he is, let it bathe you. Only then will your existence matter. That's, in terms of getting agency. Only then will your wife be left unscathed. That's another thing he needs to let go. She's not your wife anymore, man. You were dead for 5 years, dead and buried. But, in his mind, he can't let go. It hasn't been 5 years for him, and you can kind of understand it, but it's something that he's still hung up on. Mm-hmm. And he's thinking about drinking man's sins. Again, that's how he nourishes his costume. All the evil, change, become something else, a servant of hell, live on instinct. You've got that craving for blood. So it's a little bit contradictory at times. We talk about him gaining agency and him actually planning things and not letting events just occur, but then at the same time living on instinct. I mean, that's what hell wants for him. Hell wants him to embrace the evil, live on instinct, live on emotion, don't plan things out. So it's such a dichotomy. He's such a complex character, and I think people don't give Spawn, credit enough for that. But what is really interesting and creepy, and we see this in the next couple of issues, starting with 54, we're told that he dwells in the darkest alleys of New York, and that for some reason, victims of random murders, like murders that the police haven't even become aware of yet, or the bodies of enemies of organized crime, prostitutes who've been killed, people who've overdosed, derelicts who've starved to death, all of them somehow find their way to that darkest part of the alleys of New York, to Rat City, and they die there. And they've become a part of the throne that Spawn sits on. And again, it's very much in this idea of this contradictory character, this complicated character of Spawn, where we know that at his core, Al Simmons has heroic tendencies. He got caught up in becoming an assassin for the government. It was something he was good at. And I can certainly understand that, like when killing is what you're good at, but, and, we as humans, we get some satisfaction with being praised, obviously, for doing something good, but just in the act of a job well done, there's something gratifying about that. But when what you're doing can so often cross that line into something that's immoral, like murder, when the killing's not justified, again, it's a very complex character. And we're talking about Al Simmons before he even became Spawn. Mm-hmm. And now he's Spawn, and he needs the nourishment of whatever evil that these poor people who have died possess in them. And you see the worms at the bottom of the page. Is this okay? Is it okay that all these dead bodies are drawn to him, or people are drawn to him right at the moment of their death, and he's like living off of whatever evil potential they had left? Like, in a way, it's really macabre and it's really creepy and horrific. But on the other hand, if he's going to use what he gains from these people for good, do the ends justify the means? Like, it's certainly creepy. And this is certainly a really horrific page in a lot of ways from Capullo, man. I mean, it's super detailed, but it's not for the faint of heart.
He definitely crosses the line in many, many ways. Uh, should I be rooting for Spawn? Is he a hero? Is he an anti-hero? Or is he just a straight up villain? Because so much of his character, so much of his powers revolve around evil and him trying to defy that evil and find loopholes around it, you know, like he doesn't want to be subservient to this evil force, but at the same time, he kind of has to play their game. He has to surround himself with these disgusting worms and draw power from, you know, the evil or whatever in the sin in these people. And, you know, he's got a throne of dead bodies.
Yeah, it's really
from
creepy.
unsolved murders and people who OD'd. Like the moral thing to do would be to give those bodies to a hospital or give those bodies to the police or something, you know. Maybe the you know, mobster or whatever that died in the alley would have been like a crucial piece of evidence in solving other murder cases or something. And Al just isn't thinking in that space. He's like, here's a body. I can use it to give myself an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, the counter argument to him turning it over is, can he do more good? You know, like if you're talking in a purely philosophical sense, you know, what is the greatest good? Can he do more? Can he balance the scales more on the side of good by not reporting these crimes, not reporting these bodies, not turning these bodies in, taking the power he can get from them and using it to do good? Now, I would argue that he's sort of too wrapped up in himself at this point in who he is to really say. It's not like he's thinking, I'm going to wage war against hell or I'm going to make the world a better place. No, he is still focused and always has been on Wanda and kind of making his existence better. And so
he's still running on instinct.
Yeah, he's using these bodies for self, you know, he's empowering himself so that for the sake of having power, so he can do what he wants to do. And don't get me wrong, there is something to be said for that and giving him agency in terms of, you know, a good story. But yeah, the morality of it is totally different. You know, it's not the same as, okay, well, he needs the evil that these bodies, potential that they possess or whatever energy he's pulling from them just to continue to exist. He's taken it a step beyond that. And again, I would argue that I might be more willing to overlook it if he was saying, okay, I'm going after, you know, quote unquote bad guys, or I'm, you know, stopping wars or whatever. But no, he's focused on, hey, I want to do what's best for me and protect the people that I care about.
In that situation, it's like a dark gray morality. You know, he's doing it for selfish reasons. He can't even use the excuse, well, the ends justify the means, because he doesn't have an end goal in mind right now. He's just living from moment to moment.
Yeah, and we do know, we saw at the end of last issue that Terry woke up from a dream with Spawn there, you know, in his dream revealed as Al. He finally accepted it. So he's out there in the dark alleys. He's looking for Al. Obviously, it's a dangerous place. He's run into Al there before. He wants some answers. You know, he has accepted the fact that Spawn and Al are one and the same. So as he's searching around, he runs into a couple of bums, and they kind of accost him and say, you know, what are you doing on our turf? You better have a good reason. He's like, I'm trying to find somebody. I'm trying to find a friend. They're like, man, you don't have any friends around here. Give us your wallet. Get out of here. You don't belong here. And luckily for Terry, before he gets like physically assaulted or robbed, Cogliostro shows up and says, hey, guys, put away your weapons. Leave this guy with me. And they're kind of reluctant. They say, hey, Cog, like, we don't like the way this guy looks. Like, you know, we're just protecting our own territory. Cog's like, no, he's, you know, leave him with me. I know who he is. I'll take care of it. And when Terry goes to thank Cog, Cog's like, what are you doing? He yells at him, like, what are you doing here, man? This is not wise. It's not a safe place for you to be. And Terry's like, I got to find Spawn. I know he lives around here. I know the truth about him. I know he's my friend. And Cogliostro's like, wait, so what? Like, what's your interest in him? And that's where we kind of leave it, at least for a few moments, as we check in on Sam and Twitch and their crime mobile. And Twitch is taking some notes on his notepad, but doing it on the car, and that, you know, that freaks Sam out. What are you doing? You're going to scratch the paint. we got to take care of this baby. But then, of course, as soon as they open the door, all kinds of wrappers and bottles fall out and everything. And Sam's like, well, it's the exterior that counts. To which Twitch replies, I guess I'll keep that in mind as I head to the docks to meet with that same guy that we talked about previously who slid the file under their door, all this other information about some other guys that were involved in the conspiracy with Chief Banks and Jason Wynn and all of that, the ones that got off scot-free that were sort of named in the information that they had, they now have more information, and we're told that that guy agreed to meet Sam and Twitch. Their speculation is he is some high-ranking government official, but he didn't show up last time. But he has now set another meet, so they're waiting on the docks to find out who he is and why he's giving him the information and how that's all gonna play out. So we're checking in on Sam and Twitch here, and I do appreciate that McFarlane does have us check in, but that plot line moves pretty slow, has been moving pretty slow, and continues to move pretty slow for the next few issues. So we do get a scene of Jason Wynn kicking back, smoking his cigars as he often does, but not a whole lot with Wynn in this episode. I think that might be the only panel he shows up in, as a matter of fact. But switching back to Terry, Spawn is there, and again, it's mentioned about how for whatever reason, it's not only the bodies of these people, but a lot of the kind of detritus of their crimes, whether it be drugs or money or stolen jewels or whatever, it all seems to just find its way into that nest that Spawn has created for himself. And whether it's stolen goods or money or whatever, they're worthless to Spawn. Yet they become drawn there. So as Terry finds this place and shows up, you can see the look on his face there when he finds it, because this is not a place for the faint of heart. With all these dead bodies just stacked up like cordwood, like throughout the alleyway, and Spawn's throne made out of dead bodies, and Terry's like, what's going on? I mean, he finally accepts the fact that this is his buddy, and when he shows up, there's all these dead bodies there. Like, and so
Hey,
Terry,
buddy, what's going on?
Yeah.
You got a couple more corpses in your general vicinity that is more than healthy. I've got questions.
Yeah, he's like, what's going on, man? I need to understand. Is this really you? And Spawn doesn't want to have to deal with it. He's like, get out of here. He's like, no, Terry, finally, I want some answers. Are you some murdering lunatic? Like, what the hell is going on? And Alec, he kind of lashes out here, because again, don't forget that the last time that Spawn attacked Jason Wynn, or was finally going to give Jason Wynn final justice, I guess we'd say, Terry was the one that saved Wynn. And so Spawn is still feeling betrayed by Terry here. So, when Terry screams at him, says, no, I want some answers, Spawn, again, acting on instinct, like Blake mentioned, he just lashes out and just pins him against the wall, and he's, screaming back at him, you stole my wife. And Terry's yelling, giving as good as he gets. He's like, we thought you were dead, man. Don't you understand? Dead, gone forever, buried. It was 5 years. You can't forget it was 5 years, And Spawn is like, so 5 years, that gives you the right to screw my wife. And Terry's like trying to explain, hey, it wasn't like we meant for it to happen. I was doing what I thought you would want me to do. I was taking care of her, trying to get her through it. We didn't plan on falling in love. It just happened. I kind of see both sides. For Al's like, oh, is that supposed to make me feel better? Mm-hmm. Wynn was having me killed, and now you work for Wynn. You're defending him. Like what? And you stole my wife. Like, this isn't right. Yeah. You're living my life. And Terry's finally has a chance to explain. No, you're wrong. You don't understand. Wanda's innocent. Wynn framed me, and I'm getting close to Wynn to try to find a way to get back at him. And it may be that Spawn would believe this. I tend to think maybe he wouldn't. He's sort of too close to it in a lot of ways. But luckily, Terry has somebody who can corroborate his story as Cogliostro shows up. And this is really interesting what Cagliostro says. Like first Spawn tells him, hey, get out of here. It's none of your business. And Cog says, no, listen, man, this guy used to be a friend of yours and now he's a victim. And everything that's happened is because of what you've done. It's your fault, Al. It's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's interesting, right? Like you think, okay, well, it's because Jason Wynn's just a scumbag. And like, no, there's more to it than that. It's the fact that Al went and stole those weapons that led to this.
All the way back in like what, issue 6?
Yeah, issue 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So I get what Al is saying, saying, this isn't good enough. He's betrayed me. I don't care what his excuse is. He's living my life and I'm a monster. I'm disgusting. Wanda can't even look at me. Like, no, I refuse to listen to anything that he has to say. Like, I'm dead. I'm dead. And Terry's, coming to grips with that yeah, his friend is dead. So Spawn, he says to Cog, like, why should I listen to you? Like, why, and again, Terry's saying, hey, he framed me. I'm trying to get the information that I need to bury this guy, to keep Wanda safe, to keep Cian safe, to keep myself safe. And again, I don't know that Spawn, that Al Simmons believes Terry without Cog there to kind of back him up, because Spawn even says, when did you become such a tough guy? Remember, Terry's not a field agent, he's always been just an analyst.
He's just a desk jockey.
Yeah. And so for him to be doing this, and so Terry says, well, yeah, I'm not a tough guy. I'm not a field agent. And that's kind of why I'm here. I need your help. And Spawn's again, like, why should I help you? And Cog reminds him, well, because this is all your fault, right? You stole those guns that nobody knew were there except for so few people. And certainly Jason Wynn is not going to think, oh, it's Al Simmons back from the dead stealing these weapons.
Yeah.
Terry's on the short list. Terry gets blamed for it. Everything that's happened to Wanda and Terry and Cian to a lesser extent really is Al Simmons' fault.
Mm-hmm.
Because
he doesn't want to acknowledge that. He is living 5 years in the past. Wanda is still his wife. Terry's his best friend, and he just got murdered by Wynn. Like all of this is just in the last couple months for him. And it's so frustrating. And I love how Spawn's written this way in these issues, is because he's not acknowledging how it's been 5 years for everybody else. Like, he knows, but he's still not giving people the benefit of the doubt. It's like, how was Terry supposed to know? No one knows that Jason Wynn had Al assassinated. Nobody knows that. Like, Terry doesn't know it. Wanda doesn't know it. They just thought he died in the line of duty. So there's no reason for them to think, like, oh, I'm going to go work for, the guy that murdered my best friend. Like that's not in Terry's head. That's not why he did that. But Al thinks that Terry's like maliciously trying to hurt Al somehow. It's like, dude, you died 5 years ago. You haven't been here. Like, I had no idea. And in one of the previous episodes, we were talking, Al has a discussion with someone, and he basically gives Wanda the pass. He tells, I think it was the fourth Lord, the Lord of the Fourth Hell. He's like, no, it's okay. Wanda had to move on. She had to heal. She had to grow. He gave Wanda the pass because Wanda's pure. Wanda's innocent. He loves Wanda. That's always been his number one motivation. But he doesn't give Terry the pass. And I just think that's so interesting, that it's okay when she moves on, but it's not okay when Terry moves on. And he holds so much against Terry when Terry is just as innocent in all of this as Wanda is.
Yeah, and it goes even beyond that, because it's one thing for Terry to be innocent of what Spawn thinks that he's done, what Al thinks he's done. It's another thing for Terry to be bearing the brunt of things Al has done. Al stole the weapons, and the suspicion of that all fell on Terry. And
Yeah.
Cog's own words is like, after all, why would anyone assume a dead man had done it? Like
Yeah.
nobody, and even with Cog, now again, I think Spawn doesn't buy it at all if it comes from Terry's mouth. With Cog, I think Spawn at least gives the idea the benefit of the doubt, but he still wants proof. And Terry says, "Okay, we'll be at my office tomorrow, and I'll show you." And then we do get a scene with the talking heads here. And this is interesting. I don't think it necessarily has a lot to do with this particular issue, but all three of the different talking heads here, they're all talking about different areas of unrest in the world and CIA involvement. The implication being that the CIA is supplying weapons, and by the CIA I mean Jason Wynn, kind of behind the scenes, destabilizing. And I will say this about, and we'll talk about it more when we get into the next issue based on what happens, but just based on what's going on in the world right now, it's a little strange to be talking about this kind of stuff with North Korea and Eastern Europe and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But like I said, we'll get into that more in the next issue, and you'll see why for obvious reasons. So the following night, Terry's hanging out at his office late, waiting for Spawn to show up, kind of not telling Wanda the truth. He doesn't want Wanda to know that Al's back. He's trying to keep her safe. That may be another part of the reason that, and we haven't gotten there yet, but it may be something else that has to do with the friction between Al and Terry. But once Spawn shows up, Al shows him the information he has, and again, don't forget that Al Simmons was a major operator for the CIA. Like, he not only was he just a trigger man, but he's very intelligent in the way that arms are moved around and deals are done, and government being backed by other governments and that sort of thing. So he's a great analyst as well. He lived that life for so long, and so it's not too long before he sees the proof that Terry has, and he starts to believe that Terry's onto something. But as they're talking, one thing that does come up is Terry says, "You're the one that healed my cancer, right? Like, if you hate me so much and you want to kill me, like, why did you save me?" And of course, Al's not about to reveal his reasons. He just says, I had my reasons. So they come to an agreement. Well, go ahead.
I feel like there's a lot of toxic masculinity built into Al because he's so macho, because he's so aggressive all the time.
Yep.
He can't emotionally connect with people the way that a regular adult would. And so, he just bottles it all up.
Well, I think that's always been a part of him, and it's kind of shown in the flashbacks we see even in his relationship with Wanda. But I always got the impression that his relationship with Wanda softened him, and that his relationship with Wanda brought out the best of him and kind of subsumed that part of him that's, always has to be macho, can't seem weak or what have you. Now the pendulum swung back so far the other way because that love of Wanda was what was exploited. His emotions were what was exploited. His emotions were what allowed Malbolgia to make the deal with him. So his walls in terms of that kind of, hey, I can't show any weakness. I can't show anything that's perceived as a weaker emotion. I can't show any of that. So, but he does agree to help Terry get some proof that Wynn is the one behind it. And as they shake on it, they lock eyes, and I think there's something that breaks between both of them. That wall comes down a little bit to some extent. I mean, these guys were, really, really good friends, and it ends with them embracing, which I think, like, up to this point, I mean, I haven't read every Capullo issue of Spawn, but up to this point, this is my favorite Capullo image that I've seen in a Spawn book with Al and Terry embracing that. It's such a powerful image of friendship and character. Yeah, it's fantastic.
This is so much growth. Like, literally what I was just talking about, Al, and what you were saying too, Al has put up all these walls, and maybe his relationship with Wanda had softened him a little, but that edge is always there. And it's something that he was never really able to mature out of. He never grew emotionally. So seeing this image after 53 issues of seeing him be closed off to the world, struggling with depression, struggling with anger and grief and feelings of betrayal. After seeing how much he hated Terry for all these preconceived ideas, seeing this embrace was so impactful. This is my favorite shot of the whole series. And that isn't to say that there isn't other amazing images and art and everything throughout, the entire series, but this just had so much built up to it. This was really the culmination of a huge emotional arc that Spawn started all the way back in issue number 1. And it's just so good. The lighting, the build up to it, they shake the hands, they make the eye contact, and they're just like, fuck it. And they hug each other. It's just so good.
Yeah, it really is. And that's something else that I want to point out, as I'll flip back through here for anybody who's watching on YouTube, where you can see all the images. If you'll notice, we've been recapping this. It's not like there's a lot of action. Yeah, Spawn pins Terry to the wall at one point. That's about as actiony as it gets. There's no fighting.
Gonna attack Terry at one point.
Yeah, there's not really any sort of fight or dynamic action that happens in this issue. So you got to give credit to McFarlane for pacing it really, really well in terms of the way he set everything up with the writing. And then obviously a lot of credit to Greg Capullo for the visual storytelling, where you're never bored. It's a very compelling issue. It reads, at the same pace as any other Spawn issue that does have some sort of big battle. But it very much is a talking head sort of issue. But based on the visual storytelling, based on the detail, based on the emotion in the faces that Capullo gives us, again, you're not bored. You never go, oh, well, that was a crappy issue. There was no action. No, there's action, but it's about emotional growth and in terms of moving the story along, in terms of momentum, there's a lot of momentum here. But again, it's in terms of the relationship and how it changes from the beginning of the issue and previous issues, obviously, between Al and Terry, and what it all leads to and culminates in that embrace in the end. So, it's this fantastic work, wonderful detail throughout. Like I said, you're never bored. There's a couple of images that really stand out for me. Obviously, that last one that we talked about, and then the Spawn on the throne of corpses, which is horrific, that we talked about already, just the amount of detail. But I want to call attention to the top of the other page opposite that throne, where you see the eyes of Spawn and the eyes of Terry when they're juxtaposed, when it goes to that, from that transition of us getting kind of Spawn's thoughts to, hey, let's transition over to Terry. Terry is, on his way to look for Spawn. And it's even mirrored a little bit in the 2 panels right below, where Spawn's holding onto a guy's hat, and you see that sort of circular shape of the hat, and that's mirrored by the circular shape of the steering wheel as Terry's driving his car to go hunt down Spawn. That is really interesting composition and page layout from Capullo, and it's just, it works so well.
The visual parallels that Capullo, he has several motifs that he always goes back to for his entire run in Spawn. There's several trends that he creates and he always falls back to, and there's a beauty in repetition. There's a certain familiarity that you build up and patterns that you can see. One of his favorite things to do is to start super close and zoomed in on something, and then over the course of several panels, he'll zoom out so you get the full picture. And these visual parallel panel things where, half the page is just, it's Terry's side of things, and then it's Spawn's side of things. And the way that it's designed makes it look like they're looking at each other. And like you said, with the steering wheel and then Spawn holding the hat, it shows that they're in very similar spaces, more similar than they probably want to admit.
Yeah, more similar than they realize, for sure. Yeah, and as far as that visual trick of being super zoomed in on something and pulling back, McFarlane does that too at times. And so I really appreciate that that's something that Capullo, because again, I've talked in the past about how Capullo's style changes to become a little more like McFarlane's style. And it is a nice, as you put it, to have that consistency, whether it's McFarlane, whether it's Capullo, whether it's somebody else. It's nice to have that throughput when an artist will use some of the same design elements, the same storytelling elements in the series, because again, it helps to give it some consistency of look throughout. So anyway, anything else to add about issue 54 before we call it good?
No, I think it's good. It's one of my favorites. That final shot is just so good.
Yeah,
I
again,
love it.
it's my favorite, one of my favorite images. Wow. I mean, I can only imagine who has that page. They must have it framed up on their wall. It's fantastic. I'm sure it would go
I
for
want to get like a full poster of it, just hang it up. Like it's just so good. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, there's been I've been reading this, and again, I've been a fan of Greg, and he's fantastic with his fans, and I'm personally a fan of his work and what have you. But I've never desired a Greg Capullo Spawn page more than I do in my life right now. Like I would have thought, if somebody said if you could have one Capullo page, what would it be? I would probably it's probably something from DC. Maybe he's drawn Superman a few times here or there. It's my favorite character, but no, I think if I had a choice now, it would be from an upcoming issue, and we'll talk about it when we get there.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, I think his Spawn work is just fantastic. Some of his best work he's ever done, no doubt.
Absolutely. So. I hope one day that he makes a triumphant return. Not to say anything about the current artist for the series, but he just has such an iconic style, and I feel like his and McFarlane's style together is really what brought people to the book in the first place, because it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, I know he does covers from time to time, but yeah, it would be great to have him and Todd on just, even if it was like an 8 or 10 page story, just to trip down memory lane. But don't worry, everybody, we have plenty more issues of Capullo and McFarlane to come in this reading order as we're doing the Spawn Daily. So we appreciate everybody joining us as always. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you next time.
Later.